The needle had barely touched the old dog's skin when he let out a howl that froze the room. It wasn't fear, it wasn't pain. It was something deeper, something ancient, in that sterile white clinic, surrounded by the scent of antiseptic and silence. A golden retriever too weak to stand had just cried out, not for himself, but for someone who wasn't there, someone who was dying too, miles away, and had no idea that his best friend, his partner, was calling for him one last time. Before we begin this unforgettable story, would you mind sharing where you're from in the comments, and if stories of love, loyalty, and second chances move you? Please give this video a like and consider subscribing. Willow Ridge, Montana, late December. The wind whispered through a veil of snow, covering the quiet streets like a white shroud. Pine trees sagged under the weight of fresh powder. The town, hushed in winter's grasp, seemed to hold its breath. Inside Willow Ridge Veterinary Clinic, time felt frozen. In exam room 2, under the sterile hum of overhead lights, Scout lay still. The 12-year-old golden retriever, once golden and proud, was now gaunt, his fur dulled and graying. His breathing was thin, each rise of his ribcage a struggle. His hind legs no longer moved, his paws trembled involuntarily. His eyes, once vibrant with energy, were distant and dim. Months of illness had taken their toll. Scout's body, once built to leap over fallen beams and nose through smoke-filled ruins, had withered. His time was ending. Beside the table stood Dr. Sarah Kingsley, a tall, composed woman in her 50s with tightly pulled-back silver-streaked hair and a clinical stillness about her, known for her calm under pressure. She had delivered this procedure dozens of times before, but tonight felt different. She stared at Scout, her fingers gripping the syringe that carried the final dose. Across the room, Emily Jarvis, a young vet tech with wide eyes and unsteady hands, stood silently. She had grown attached to Scout in recent weeks, sneaking him soft blankets and extra pats when no one was watching. Her heart clenched as she watched the old dog breathe. "It's time," Sarah said softly, more to herself than anyone else. She stepped forward. The needle tip hovered above Scout's fur, poised to give him peace. Then Scout moved. Not much, just the twitch of an ear, the soft tension of muscles long thought useless. His head lifted barely, but his eyes opened, cloudy and unsteady, and fixed on something beyond the room. Then came the sound. A howl, deep, drawn from a place older than memory. It rose from his chest like smoke from smoldering coals. It wasn't loud, but it vibrated the air. A sound not of pain, but of longing, of need. Sarah froze mid-motion. Emily gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Scout howled again, fainter, more ragged, but still calling. Outside the room, a receptionist paused, hearing it from down the hall. The entire clinic seemed to hold its breath. The syringe in Sarah's hand lowered, her brow furrowed. "He's not ready," she murmured, miles away, in Riversong Medical Center. A figure lay motionless beneath a cascade of machines and tubes. Ethan Walker. 45, once a robust K-9 officer with a commanding presence, now reduced to brittle bones and pale skin. His heart condition had advanced too quickly. He hadn't spoken in hours. Nurses whispered that he likely wouldn't wake again. Ethan had been Scout's handler, his partner, his best friend. They had served together through natural disasters and missing person searches across 3 states for over a decade. They had been side by side. Now, only one of them was conscious, but both were fading, in the hospital's waiting area. Chloe Walker, Ethan's 17-year-old daughter, sat hunched over a tablet, her auburn braid draped over a heavy sweater, her legs curled beneath her. She wasn't like most girls her age. Quiet, observant, the type who listened more than she spoke, the type who carried grief carefully. She had requested access to the vet clinic's camera just to see Scout one last time. The staff had reluctantly agreed, and now she was watching. At first, the room on the screen was still. Then Scout howled. The sound crackled through the tinny tablet speakers. Chloe's eyes widened. She leaned in, heart racing. He howled again. Her fingers trembled. Her breath caught in her throat. She didn't know what was happening, but she felt it in her bones. Without a word, she stood. The tablet slipped under her arm. She ran through the corridor, past the nurse's station, through the doors toward her father's room. Something had changed. Scout was calling, and someone had to listen. The sterile lights of room 214 at Riversong Medical Center buzzed quietly above Ethan Walker's head. The heart monitor beside his bed chirped erratically, a jagged melody that mirrored the chaos inside his chest. His body, ravaged by years of physical wear and a failing heart condition, trembled beneath the thin hospital blanket. His breathing was uneven, his skin pale and waxen, yet his eyes, bleary with exhaustion, flickered with something fierce when they landed on his daughter. "Scout," he rasped. "What did you say?" Chloe Walker, standing at the foot of his bed, clutched her tablet like a lifeline. Her auburn braid was unraveling, strands of hair clinging to her damp cheeks. Her fingers were trembling, her voice hoarse. He howled, "Dad, he's still fighting. He's waiting for you." Ethan tried to sit up. Pain knifed through his chest, forcing a grunt from his throat. The heart monitor screamed in protest. A nurse burst into the room, eyes wide, hair pulled back into a messy bun under her surgical cap. Her name tag read Marcy, a stocky woman in her mid-30s with a quick gait and a "don't mess with me" attitude honed from years in trauma care. "Mr. Walker, you need to stay still," she said, already reaching for a sedative. "No," Ethan growled through clenched teeth. "Don't touch me. I need to go to him." "You're in cardiac crisis," she snapped. "Even sitting up could kill you." Chloe stepped between them, her voice cracking but loud. Please just listen." Marcy hesitated. She wasn't heartless. Her husband was a fireman. She knew the stories, knew how these bonds between K9s and handlers weren't just emotional, they were elemental. A few seconds later, a doctor entered. He was tall, thin, and somber, with a pair of wire-rimmed glasses perched precariously on his nose. Dr. Caleb Monroe, the attending cardiologist, looked as though he'd aged 10 years in the last 6 months. He'd been treating Ethan for nearly a year and had watched his decline with quiet grief. "Ethan," Caleb said gently, "you're not stable enough to leave the hospital. I know what Scout means to you. I do. But you can't. I can." Ethan cut him off, his voice as sharp as it could be in his condition. "And I will." Chloe reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a folded sheet of paper, a "do not resuscitate" waiver. Signed. "Dated, if he doesn't go now," she said, tears pooling at the corners of her eyes. "He'll never forgive himself, and neither will I." Caleb looked at her, then at Ethan, then at the monitor. After a long breath, he pinched the bridge of his nose. "If we do this, it's against everything I'd recommend, but I'm not going to stop a man from keeping a promise." 10 minutes later, EMTs rolled in with a small transport gurney. One of them, Luis, was a young man with olive skin, kind eyes, and a quiet voice. He was in his late 20s and had just finished his 3rd week on the job, still green, but already learning the emotional weight that came with it. Luis knelt by Ethan's side, checking vitals and adjusting the straps. "We'll get you there, sir," he said. "Just hold on." As they prepared the ambulance, Chloe made one last call this time, not to a hospital or vet, but to someone far more important to her in this moment. "Aria," she whispered into her phone, her voice shaking. "I need you to do something." On the other end was Aria Bennett, Chloe's best friend since 6th grade. Aria was short, sharp-witted, and practically glued to her phone at all hours. With her dyed turquoise hair, oversized hoodie, and a perpetually skeptical expression, she often looked like she'd just stepped out of a Tumblr post from 2014. But Arya had a gift she could make anything go viral? Say no more. Arya replied, "Send me a live feed. I'll handle the rest. Back at Willow Ridge Veterinary Clinic." Dr. Sarah Kingsley was staring down at Scout, the syringe still untouched on the tray. His body hadn't moved again since the howls, but there was something in the stillness now, a tension. A waiting. The office phone rang. Emily, sitting just outside the exam room with bloodshot eyes, picked up. "This is Willow Ridge Clinic. It's Chloe Walker," came the voice, firm and breathless. "Please, don't do it. My dad's on his way. He's coming. Scout needs him." Emily looked through the window at the motionless dog, then at Sarah, who raised an eyebrow. "Let me talk to your vet," Chloe pleaded. Emily handed the phone to Sarah, Dr. Kingsley speaking. Chloe didn't waste time. Scout howled because he knew, "Dad is leaving the hospital now. He's risking everything for this. Please, just give them a chance." Sarah's eyes softened. "Just slightly. How long? 35 minutes? Maybe less." Sarah glanced at Scout, then out the window, where the snow had begun to fall again. Heavier this time. "If he gets here, we'll wait, but I won't let the dog suffer needlessly." "Understood?" Chloe's voice cracked. "Thank you." As the call ended, Emily muttered, "You believe in that stuff." Sarah looked at her, voice flat. "I believe in giving people a chance to say goodbye." The ambulance's siren cut through the cold night air, winding through snow-slicked back roads inside. Ethan clutched the side rail of the gurney, his knuckles white, sweat beading across his forehead. He wasn't sure if it was pain or hope that kept his heart beating, maybe both. Behind him, Chloe sat upright, holding the tablet that streamed Arya's live video. Hundreds of viewers were already watching strangers from across the country who had stumbled upon the headline, "Dying Firefighter Makes Final Journey to His Dog, a K9 Reunion Against Time." In that moment, Chloe didn't care about views or shares. All she cared about was time, and the stubborn, battered heart of the man beside her, a heart that refused to quit. Snow thickened over the quiet streets of Willow Ridge, falling in great, heavy clumps that blanketed the town in an eerie hush. The roads glistened under the glow of flickering street lamps as the clock neared midnight. Inside Willow Ridge Veterinary Clinic, time felt like it was hanging on a thread, waiting for something or someone to arrive. In exam, room 2. Scout lay motionless, but not lifeless. His breathing, though shallow, had gained a rhythm. The erratic hitches had softened into a fragile steadiness. His heart, slow but consistent, pulsed beneath his matted golden fur. It was as if something inside him had shifted, not recovered, not healed, but endured. Dr. Sarah Kingsley, standing near the foot of the table, watched the monitors with the same quiet intensity she had once reserved for emergency surgeries. Her arms were crossed, the syringe untouched on the tray beside her, though she said little. Her mind was racing. She had never been one to believe in signs. Science and procedure ruled her world. But Scout's sudden stabilization after his howl, it had shaken her. There was something beyond physiology at work, something she couldn't measure with a stethoscope. His vitals. Emily Jarvis whispered from behind her. "They're holding." Sarah nodded, not looking away from the monitor. "He's waiting for him." Emily said nothing, in her hands. She held the still-warm phone from the call with Chloe, a call that had changed the course of the evening. Out in the clinic's modest waiting area, dimly lit by a single low-hanging lamp, a couple sat on a worn beige couch, their fingers intertwined. Raymond and Lillian Monroe had come in earlier that evening with their cat, an old Maine coon named Biscuit, who was recovering from a minor procedure. But they had stayed. Raymond, a wiry man in his late 70s with sun-spotted hands and thin white hair, leaned on a wooden cane shaped like a shepherd's crook. His frame was curved from years of physical labor. He had been a lumber mill foreman for most of his life, and his voice held the weight of stories long past. Lillian, smaller and softer in demeanor, wore a thick floral coat and glasses that magnified her watery blue eyes. Her snow-white curls were tucked neatly into a knit hat, and she clutched a thermos of black coffee she hadn't touched in an hour. They hadn't meant to stay this long, but when Scout howled, they had looked at each other and stayed. "It reminds me," Raymond said, voice raspy, "of Duke." Lillian smiled faintly. "Duke never let you out of his sight, even when you broke your leg on the mountain. He didn't move till help arrived. He waited 36 hours. Raymond nodded. "Didn't eat, didn't leave my side. Dogs like that, they don't just bond. They belong. Emily," overhearing from the reception desk, glanced at them. She hadn't heard that story before. "Was he a rescue dog?" she asked quietly. Raymond shook his head. "No, just a farm mutt. But he knew me better than most people ever could." Lillian looked toward the hallway leading to the exam room. "They're saying this dog's handler is on his way. Even left the hospital." Emily nodded. "He's coming now. We're just hoping there's enough time." Raymond gripped Lillian's hand a little tighter. "Sometimes, a goodbye's all a soul needs." Back in the exam room. Scout shifted slightly. His paw twitched. His tail gave a faint, unconscious flick. Sarah blinked. "Did you see that?" Emily leaned forward. "Yes, it's the third time in 10 minutes. Sarah exhaled slowly. "I've never seen this before. Not like this." The snow continued to fall outside, the wind soft but relentless. A distant siren echoed from somewhere down the winding roads of Willow Ridge, followed by the muted glow of red and white lights flickering beyond the frost-covered windows. The ambulance was coming. At that moment, Sarah's phone buzzed. A notification from a local community group lit up her screen. "Firefighter leaves hospice to see dying K9. Partner livestream hits 500K. Views." Her brow furrowed. She clicked the link. The video showed Ethan on a stretcher, pale and sweating but alert, with Chloe at his side, holding his hand. The caption read, "A bond forged in fire now tested by time." Sarah turned to Emily. "It's everywhere." Emily looked over. "What is this?" "Them. Their story." Emily crossed the room to see. Her breath caught as she read the comments pouring in. "This is the kind of love that changes people." "I'm in tears. My grandfather was a K9 handler. We don't deserve dogs like Scout." Sarah set the phone down slowly. Something inside her, long dormant, stirred. She moved to Scout's side and gently ran her fingers along his back, careful not to startle him. "You're holding on, aren't you?" she murmured. "You feel him getting closer." Scout didn't respond, but his ear twitched, as if acknowledging her voice. Emily moved to the supply cabinet and quietly swapped out a fresh blanket, warmed from the dryer. She laid it gently over Scout's body. "He's warm now," she said. "He'll be okay a little longer." Neither of them said what they were thinking. If he can just wait a little more. In the waiting area. Raymond pulled out his phone and recorded a short video of the snowy night outside and the quiet hallway leading toward the exam room. He spoke softly into the camera. "This is Willow Ridge Clinic. A dog's waiting for his best friend, and the world's waiting with him." He posted it to his Facebook page. Within an hour, it would be shared over 20,000 times. The ambulance screeched to a halt just outside Willow Ridge Veterinary Clinic, its flashing lights casting streaks of red and white across the snow-covered entrance. Wind howled softly between the pine trees as a curtain of snow continued to fall. silencing the world like a final breath before something sacred. Inside the ambulance, Ethan Walker gritted his teeth against the pain. His chest ached with every heartbeat, sharp jolts echoing down his arms. Sweat drenched the collar of his hospital gown despite the frigid air, but in his eyes, tired, sunken, rimmed with dark hollows, there was focus and fire. Beside him, Chloe Walker held his hand tightly, her fingers nearly numb from cold and tension. Her other hand clutched her phone, camera rolling. Her voice was shaky, barely more than a whisper as she filmed, "We're here. Just hold on. Dad, he's waiting." The back doors swung open. Snow blew inward. IMT Luis jumped down first, his boots crunching on the ice-crusted pavement. He was shorter than most, with a stocky build, olive skin, and sleeves pushed up over strong forearms. He moved with calm precision, positioning the ramp and gesturing quickly to the others. Inside the clinic, Emily Jarvis heard the sound and ran to open the double doors leading into the hallway. Her eyes, still red from earlier tears, lit up with sudden urgency. "They're here." Dr. Sarah Kingsley stood at Scout's side, her tall frame stiff, arms crossed in a moment of silent preparation. The cold expression she wore like armor for most of her career cracked at the corners. "It's time," she said softly, and placed one hand gently on Scout's head. "Hold on, boy." Scout stirred. The old golden retriever shifted slowly beneath the warm blanket. His limbs, so long unmoving, quivered as muscle memory reawakened. His ears twitched. His eyes fluttered open, cloudy but alert. He lifted his head, just a few inches but enough to make Emily gasp aloud. "He knows." Chloe burst through the hallway with the gurney. Luis and another EMT rolled Ethan toward the exam room, their boots tracking slush into the polished tile the moment the wheels crossed the threshold. Scout's body jolted gently, as if magnetized. "Dr. Gee." Kingsley stepped back. Her voice was firm but full of awe. "Get him close. Let them see each other." The gurney rolled beside the steel exam table. Luis locked the wheels. Chloe stepped forward, voice trembling as she reached across her father's chest to adjust the camera angle. "Dad, we're here." Ethan turned his head with great effort, his vision blurred at the edges. But when he saw that golden figure stretched out beside him, something in his soul unclenched. "Scout," he whispered. Scout let out a low, broken whimper. Then, with all the strength his old body could summon, he inched forward, his nose reaching the edge of the table, toward the man who had once run into fires with him. Ethan stretched his hand. It shook violently, but he reached anyway. His fingertips brushed fur. Scout's breathing deepened. His tail, still wrapped in the blanket, twitched softly. "I told you I'd come," Ethan rasped. "You held on." Luis took a step back, hand over his mouth. Emily began to cry openly. Sarah stood still, hands folded, her eyes fixed not on the monitors but on the space between Ethan's fingers and Scout's muzzle. Chloe knelt beside the gurney, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. She held her phone still, capturing every second. "I'm here," Ethan whispered again. "Good boy. That's my boy." Scout let out another sound, softer than the first, a breath full of something deeper than pain, something close to relief. For minutes, no one in the room spoke. No one moved. It was a silence that didn't ask for anything. A silence that honored. Outside the room, the waiting area had grown crowded. Word had spread quickly through town. A local reporter from the Willow Ridge Weekly, Nate Forrester, had arrived just 15 minutes earlier with his notepad and a vintage DSLR camera. In his early 40s with a round face and wind-reddened cheeks. Nate had a reputation for chasing minor holiday parades and council meetings, but tonight, He knew he was witnessing something bigger than a story. He stood by the wall, recording. Then, after a moment, simply set the camera down. Across the country, Chloe's livestream continued. Views climbed rapidly from tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands to over 2 million before sunrise. The title read, "A Firefighter and His Dog, Their Final Moment. Together." Hospitals and rescue shelters began reposting it. Organizations that paired veterans with service dogs shared it with messages like, "This is what love looks like. This is why our work matters." In Los Angeles, a nurse watched from her break room and texted her husband, "Watch this when you get home. It'll break you and heal you all at once." In Ohio, a retired K-9 officer clutched his old partner's collar and whispered a name he hadn't spoken aloud in years. And in that small, snow-covered room in Montana, Scout leaned his head into Ethan's palm. Chloe moved closer and whispered, "They're watching. Dad, the whole world is watching." Ethan didn't answer. He was watching too, but only one thing. "I'm proud of you," he said to Scout. "You waited for me." The golden retriever blinked slowly, and for the first time in days, his breathing evened. Peaceful. Not because the pain had ended, but because the waiting had. The winter sun dipped low over the quiet town of Willow Ridge, casting warm, golden rays across the rooftops as if trying to soften the cold that still lingered in the air. Snow had begun to melt along the sidewalks, revealing patches of brown grass and old footprints, ghosts of a season that was beginning to pass. In the backyard of a modest ranch-style house on Pine Hill Road, 2 lives that had nearly ended were just beginning again. It had been 3 weeks since that night. 3 weeks since Ethan Walker, once clinging to life by the thinnest thread, had touched the fur of his oldest friend and found the strength to keep breathing. 3 weeks since Scout, the aging golden retriever, had lifted his head and refused to let go. Now, both were healing, not miraculously, but steadily, as if hope itself had stitched their wounds from the inside out. Ethan sat on the porch in a weathered wooden chair, a soft blanket draped over his shoulders. He looked thinner than before, and the shadows beneath his eyes hadn't completely faded, but color had returned to his cheeks, and his voice no longer wavered when he spoke. Beside him, Scout lay on a cushioned bed, tail curled around his body, his breathing deep and slow. His fur had been trimmed and brushed, now golden again under the sun. The deep haze in his eyes had lifted slightly, and he watched the wind move through the trees like it was something he hadn't seen in a very long time. A month ago, no one believed either of them would still be here. After the reunion, Ethan had collapsed, but thanks to the viral video, which had now passed 8 million views. A series of events had been set in motion that no one could have predicted. A donor match. A young man named Bryce Hammond, 28, had been killed in a motorcycle accident 2 days after the video aired. His family, devout dog lovers who had watched the clip just hours earlier, saw Ethan's face in the news and requested that his name be added to the transplant list. Bryce's mother, Diana, a petite woman with gray blonde hair and a voice that broke often, had told the coordinator simply, "He's a man who fought to say goodbye to his dog. My son would want that heart to beat in someone like him." Within 24 hours, Ethan was in surgery at Billings Regional Heart Center. Dr. Naomi Granger, the lead cardiothoracic surgeon, was a tall, focused woman in her late 40s with sharp cheekbones and sleeves always rolled to her elbows. Known for her precision and steel-like demeanor, she had quietly wept in the break room after the procedure. "I've done over 100 of these," she told her team, but none of them felt like this. Ethan's recovery was slower than most, but steady. Scout, meanwhile, stayed at Willow Ridge Clinic under the care of Dr. Sarah Kingsley, who visited him every morning and evening. Emily made it a ritual to bring him a spoonful of warmed chicken broth in a porcelain mug. The dog, who had once stopped eating entirely, had begun to finish whole bowls again. And by the second week, Scout was walking short distances, tail swaying gently like the pendulum of a grandfather clock. By the fourth week, they were both home. It was Chloe who made that happen. She'd stayed in Willowridge the entire time, sleeping on hospital chairs, taking calls from journalists, and sorting through thousands of messages from strangers. One night, as Scout rested at the foot of her bed and Ethan dozed in a chair nearby, she opened a laptop and wrote the words, "No one should have to say goodbye too late." The next morning, one last goodbye was born. Chloe launched the nonprofit from her bedroom, using her live stream audience and story momentum to build traction. The mission was simple: reunite terminally ill individuals with their pets or former K-9 partners before goodbye came too soon. She connected with local shelters, VA hospitals, and hospice centers, and within days, the story had spread to animal rights communities and veteran networks across the country. Within 2 weeks, the fund had received enough donations to sponsor 12 reunions by the end of the month. One last goodbye had partnered with 3 national organizations on the final Sunday of March, under a sky painted in lavender and gold. Willowridge held its annual spring festival. A stage was built on the town square, strung with wildflowers and white lights. Booths sold honey and handmade soaps. Children danced in circles, and the smell of roasted corn and cinnamon drifted through the air midway through the event. The mayor, Colleen Dorsey, a sturdy woman in her 60s with a booming laugh and a soft spot for dogs, stepped onto the stage. Her red blazer had a small enamel pin shaped like a golden retriever. She cleared her throat. "This town has seen many heroes," she began, voice steady, "but none quite like the 2 we honor today." Chloe helped Ethan up the ramp. He wore a gray button-down shirt and dark jeans, his steps cautious but sure. At his side, Scout trotted carefully, a green service vest resting across his shoulders. The crowd applauded. Some stood, some cried. "Today," Mayor Dorsey said, "we honor more than survival. We honor the promise kept between 2 lives who refused to leave each other behind." A commemorative plaque was unveiled beneath the town's central oak tree, reading, "For Scout and Ethan, a love that waited, a promise that endured." Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Ethan sat with Chloe on the same porch. Scout curled at their feet. Fireflies blinked in the grass. Wind rustled the trees. Ethan turned to his daughter. "You gave me time I didn't think I had." Chloe leaned her head against his shoulder. "You earned every second." Scout stirred, resting his head across Ethan's foot. They didn't speak for a long time. They didn't need to, because some promises aren't whispered. They're lived beneath sunset skies, beside old friends, in homes where the heart beats not for tomorrow, but for one more beautiful today. Sometimes, miracles don't come in flashes of light or thunder from the sky. They arrive quietly, through loyalty, love, and the unbreakable bond between a man and his dog. In Ethan and Scout's journey, we witnessed something greater than survival. We witnessed a promise kept, a heart healed, and a soul that waited. It was more than chance. It was grace. In a world where time slips away too fast, this story reminds us to cherish those we love, to forgive, to reach out, and to hold on a little longer even when it hurts. Because sometimes, just sometimes, God answers not with words, but with moments. Moments that restore hope, moments that change hearts. If this story moved you, share it with someone who still believes in second chances. Leave a comment with your thoughts, and if you believe that Scout and Ethan were touched by something divine, write Amen below. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories of faith, loyalty, and love, And may God bless every one of you watching, especially those who are waiting for their own miracle. Keep believing. Keep loving. Miracles still walk among us sometimes on 4 paws.